I'm Alexis. I'm a public health practitioner. I'm a naturopath and I'm a yoga therapist. And tonight I have with me dear Teagan Russell, who is a Gottman therapist. Welcome, Teagan.
Hi, nice to be here. Very exciting.
It is very exciting to have you on board. I know our listeners are going to have lots of questions for you. So we're going to be talking about the Gottman therapy approach to conflict management, and specifically what you've brought to the conversation is this fantastic concept called sentiment override, which I know for many of us, when we hear and learn about sentiment override, it's such a light bulb that I think it's a really powerful topic that you've chosen. So thank you for bringing it to the conversation.
Yeah.
Would you like to start just by giving us a little bit about your background and then telling us, telling us about Gottman therapy?
Yeah. No worries. So I work as a Gottman therapist. I am trained as a general counsellor as well with a psychology sort of background, but I decided to really kind of hone in and specialise in the couples space, which I just absolutely love. I just find it so fulfilling. It's totally become my passion now. So yeah, I guess about the Gottman method as such. So if for those who don't know, like it's quite well known, but I guess there are some people who haven't heard of it before. It is an evidence-based form of couples therapy. So, it's been founded on over 43 years, I think, of research now, and by John and Julie Gottman over in the States. And, they've been studying couples, like this is their life's work. And so they've been studying couples, researching from things like, putting video cameras in houses while the couples are staying there. Obviously the couples know, but watching, their every interaction together, the facial expressions, the interactions, and studying it and researching and analysing, and, interviews with couples with heart rate monitors on them, and, having researchers assess the expressions on their faces and everything like that. So it's a really kind of, sort of evidence-based, research-based form of couples therapy. So it's been formulated backed by a lot of that research, which for me anyway, working, being a fairly like early stage practitioner, it gives me a lot of kind of comfort knowing I'm working with a model, a framework that's, it's proven, it's tested, it's got scientific backing, so we're kind of not just going in with me leading couples blind through my own skills or, my own ideas of what could work, but I'm actually relying on the research. So in that sense, it's comforting for me. And I think it's really comforting for couples too, to know like, okay, we're doing this framework that we know people are doing all over the world with couples, and it's really effective. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a great video which I'll put in the comments below by John Gottman. I'm sure you've seen it, Teagan, but there's so many frameworks within it. Give structure to couples who may be, and they may be on the rocks. It may be that they've been together for 20 years, 30 years, they've got family, they've got mortgage, they've got careers, and then they reach a point where they realise, wait a minute, we don't actually have resources to get through this next patch, which might be, maybe there's a crisis, a health crisis, maybe a parent, is elderly and needs support. So the Gottmans provide a structure and a framework that I agree, it gives us that real confidence that what we're doing is going to have an impact, and in a pretty short time frame, right? What is the length of time that you would normally see someone for a Gottman period?
Yeah, it is fairly quick in that sense. I mean, it depends how frequently the couple book in, but they say anywhere from around that 8 to 10 sort of mark to up to 20 sessions. So some I'd see for about 10. And, we've sort of done a pretty good, overview of a lot of the skills and interventions. Some will go closer to 20. And that kind of does depend, if there's more severe things going on, like if there's obviously been an infidelity or sort of bigger traumas like trust and things like that being broken, it's going to be longer. But if we're just doing sort of general work, around 10 sessions would be what I'd say. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And conflict management as a theme is something that none of us can avoid. So even to give couples even a glimmer of hope that within 10 sessions they can walk away with some skills and resources that they can apply is just golden. It's really golden because yeah, conflict management is unavoidable. It's an area of particular interest to me through the work that Rachel has introduced with nonviolent communication. We've started to see that conflict, those moments of conflict in relationship, are in fact golden opportunities for some really deep transformation, for closeness, for connection, for intimacy, and for expanding our capacity. So I love that you've chosen the topic of conflict management. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how that shows up in with your couples?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I guess if you are familiar with the Gottman method, most people have probably heard of the Four Horsemen. It's sort of like very popular. You can read lots about the Four Horsemen, and it's great because it's really memorable, the name, and so we kind of know about the four. If you haven't heard of it, the Four Horsemen are what the Gottmans have termed the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. So if these are showing up in the relationship, and we don't eliminate them, they're going to sort of signal the end of time, which is why they've come up with that name, the end of the relationship.
I didn't know that. Okay, the end of time. Yeah.
Or the end of the
Traffic.
apocalypse, the end of the relationship. So that's what they called that. So there's stonewalling, contempt, criticism, and defensiveness. So one of those, big aspects, I guess, in conflict management is to work on eliminating those horsemen. But I guess to go a bit further than just the horsemen, because I think a lot of us are familiar with those, but I mean, I'm happy to talk more about them, but I guess the thing that I've found really interesting doing the work with couples and learning the Gottman method is that there's more to conflict management than just eliminating the horsemen. So there's things like we want to see couples like repair, actually repair either during a conflict is starting to happen, a couple can actually start to make repair attempts during the conflict to stop it from escalating. So learning how to do those repairs during conflicts, learning how to repair also after is also really important. That's one aspect. Another aspect is flooding, which I don't know if you've heard of that word, flooding, but I find couples, when they hear about that word flooding, they're like, oh wow, this is a light bulb moment, because it's a term that the Gottmans have obviously sort of, I guess, coined for when you're having an argument with your partner and you go into like that state of fight or flight. So you feel, we all get like that, heart starting to race and feeling all sorts of things in the body because it's getting really heated. And so the Gottmans would call that flooding. And so we teach, couples as well to recognize when they're starting to feel flooded, and also to take time out of the conversation. And because when you're in that state of flooding, you're not using the rational part of your brain. You've gone into like the emotional sort of center of the brain. And so it's pretty much going to be impossible to resolve what's happening in that state if you're flooded. So it's as simple as like taking a 20-minute time out to regulate. Your system will regulate after about 20 minutes. They say from the research, for men it can be more. They've just found it can take more like an hour or a bit longer, but generally speaking, just even knowing, oh, we're feeling flooded, or even just one's feeling flooded, let's take some time out from this conversation and make sure we come back. But can even just prevent a lot of conflicts going, crazy, getting too escalated at that point. So managing flooding, compromise as well is a big part of conflict, helping couples to get out of gridlocks, so when they're coming in, often they're in real gridlocks. So they're having the same arguments like over and over again, or just similar types of arguments about the same, and they're just not going anywhere, like neither will budge, on their different views. And so helping couples with tools and skills to compromise is part of that conflict management as well. Then we've also got like accepting influence from each other. That's another Gottman term. So being able to, like, when one partner suggests or wants to, do something, let's just say, let's go to dinner here. It's as simple as accepting that. Okay, taking on your partner's influence, really. And I mean, this is another one that I think is really interesting. It's not, doesn't come directly in terms of under conflict management, but I think it plays into the broader, broader picture of couples in conflict, and that's called the sentiment override. So that can be, so a couple can either come in, well, generally speaking, actually, they're usually in a state of what we call negative sentiment override. So when a couple starts with us, sorry, I'm just going on and on here, but
Keep going, let it rip. Yeah.
But when a couple comes in, usually we get them to do a questionnaire. So like a 2-hour questionnaire after their first appointment, sort of the process. Mm-hmm. And that'll show us whether they're in a state of negative or positive sort of override. Mm-hmm. And I'd say 95% of my couples are in this state of what we call negative sentiment override. Mm-hmm. So what that sort of looks like is, I say it's like the opposite of rose-colored glasses. So, when we all know that word, like rose-colored glasses. So when you're in, usually the start of a relationship, we've got that real, like, everything's great about everything that they do, and we interpret their behaviors positively, even neutral behaviors, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We're not hyper vigilant to things. But what happens is that, like, unfortunately, slowly over time, if a couple has a lot of conflicts, unrepaired, resentments that have built up it happens over a long, like, usually it's slow, and eventually the couple can go into, like, what we call the negative sentiment override. So it's almost like they're seeing everything negatively about what their partner does. Even neutral behaviors are going to be interpreted negatively, like, and so usually the couple is in that state, and that plays into having more conflict too. When you're in that state, you can just imagine you're more likely to interpret everything, oh, they're home late, or they didn't tell me they were going to do this or whatever, and we're going to interpret that as negative, like intentional towards us or negatively, right? And so that plays into all of that as well. Yeah.
Yes, it is a really key aspect of any relationship that's not functioning well. You're helping me to recognize where it's present for me in my life at the moment, and it is amazing how much it flavors all of the interactions that I have with this person. And that, it could be it could be that maybe there was a text message, perfect example, because they're so easily misread. And it may even be a very neutral text message, but if I'm in that negative sentiment override, when I read this, I tell myself, blah, 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 which is in fact a statement that was given to me by Rachel and my shared colleague, Jeremy Gates, a wonderful practitioner. And he says to even write down, I think it may have come from Rachel originally, I'm not sure, but when you tell me that so and so needs support, I tell myself blah 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 blah. So even just to acknowledge that here's the matter of fact, and here's the story I'm telling myself, I think can be really helpful for couples, but even really any individual who's having difficulty with another individual. That just to acknowledge, okay, look, I'm probably overriding the fact of the situation with some negative flavoring. That level of awareness, I think, can help just to create a bit of detachment, a bit of regulation, probably a bit of perspective. It is a really, really powerful thing to acknowledge, particularly, like you say, for those chronically difficult relationships. And I'm not sure if there's any way out without recognizing that. Otherwise it just becomes you said and perpetual negative sentiment override. So yes, would you tell us a little bit about, that's right, it's coming to me, that Gottman talks about the 5-to-1 ratio of, is it compliments or putting wind in your sails to one criticism. as a way of shifting that negative sentiment override. Is that right, Teagan?
Yeah, yep. That's definitely one. That's one sort of one of the methods that they've researched. Yeah, and I think that a few other things, I guess, because I was reflecting on this too, like what kind of helps to shift it.
Mm.
I think definitely that being more intentional with those positive actions and words and all of that, but also like we're working on, I guess, some sort of bigger things like the friendship level in the working on repairing the friendship there is sort of part of shifting. The Gottmans talk about that helps to shift them out, so that's something that we start to do in therapy too, some interventions around that. It's hard to explain without going into the specifics of each intervention, but I guess friendship is a part of it. Increasing that fondness and admiration towards each other is a big one. So one sort of activity that I like to give my couples fairly early on in the process, if they're in this state, is it's an intervention. It's about 7 weeks where you get the couple just doing this quite basic activity. It's a positive thought every day and a little task every day, and they go off and do that for 7 weeks. So you can see it's a lengthy, it's not just a 5-day sort of fix, and I found like even getting, this is obviously a Gottman intervention, even getting them to do that, starting that early on in the process, I found after a few weeks, they've been doing that every day. They've been having these positive, fond thoughts towards their partner. They're being intentional about remembering, good memories and things that they admire. And they're doing this every day. And I find that even within a few weeks, even though we haven't necessarily done that many other interventions at that point, that couples will come back and say, I'm just feeling better. Like there's a shift. Like we're just feeling nicer towards each other again. Like it's almost like sometimes it feels like they're ready to check out of therapy because they feel like they're fixed. They're like, we're back, like we're really good again. Like, and you're like, there's more work to be done, but this is a great start, obviously. Like just that they can already see, like, something shifting just in a short period of a few weeks of just like intentionally being fond and, thinking those good thoughts about my partner, I think it does a lot come down to that too, what we're dwelling on. I think someone who's in a negative sentiment, the Gottmans give the example of like someone who, two couples, you imagine one couple who's in that sentiment, the negative sentiment, and he's off away from his partner, like when he's at work, and he's just thinking negative thoughts about it. That last fight we had, or she never does that, or she forgot to do that again, or, and those are the thoughts that are like consuming him, but then you've got somebody else, let's just say another couple, somebody else, they're in the positive perspective. They're not in that negative state. And, when she's away from her partner, she's thinking about all the good things or the neutral things. She's thinking about, that last date that we went on, or, her mind's, I guess, consumed by all of those good things. Whereas someone in that negative state is consumed by all the resentments and the annoying things. And does that make sense? So
yeah.
Just even getting them doing that. Yeah.
And it makes sense. As you're talking, it's reminding me that when we meet someone, we wouldn't, think the worst immediately, or the friendship is, doomed. But to give someone the benefit of the doubt and to think of them in a positive light gives every possibility that the friendship can develop. So if we kind of exponentialize that out, then that's bound to be what's happening in our longer standing relationships too.
Yeah.
I really like this topic. I'm really pleased that you've brought it. So I'm wondering if you'd like to just maybe explain a little bit. I mean, there's so much content in what you've said, whether you might just give just even a brief example of each of the 4 horsemen, while people might be thinking about some questions that they might want to ask about their relationships. And bear in mind, listeners, that while Teagan does specialise with couples, all of these same principles, repairing, acknowledging when I'm flooding, compromise versus gridlock, accepting influence. Gosh, that's a really powerful. That they apply to all relationships. So please feel free to bring us any questions around any difficulties that you're having in your relationships at the moment. Would you be willing to give us just a brief example, Teagan, on each of the 4 horsemen, the stonewalling? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. So the stonewalling, that's really interesting. They say that usually happens as a result of being flooded. So like there's a link between being flooded and stonewalling. And you can sort of see why. So when someone is sort of worked up, a lot of the times their response is to just shut off. Like they're worked up and they just like want to shut their partner off completely, leave the house or not respond to them, so I guess so stonewalling is it's sort of really shutting down your partner's attempts to connect with you. Like it's different to just like, hey, I need 5 minutes space, or hey, I need, that's obviously not stonewalling. But let's just say your partner is trying to connect and they're just grunting, or you're just like completely ignoring, or you leave, or you don't respond to their calls or their texts. You just like completely like put up a wall basically. Yeah, and it is usually the result of that flooding usually, but the act of stonewalling itself is very damaging, obviously, to the partner, to be felt like they can't get in, can't get a response. Yeah.
So you'd encourage someone, if they feel like they need to shut down, or they need space, they need to step away, to then assure their partner, can we just park this for however long, 20 minutes, an hour, and then pick it up again? Is that what you're suggesting, to avoid
Yeah. Yeah, the like the antidote, I guess they say, to stonewalling
yes.
is physiological self-soothing. So you need to self-soothe. So you need to go and calm down. There's different ways that we teach that. How do you do that? But definitely, yeah, let your partner know, I'm flooded. Can we take a time out and make that time maybe to come back? Like in an hour. And like I said, for men, it might be longer. It might be later that night. But like, definitely come back. Don't just, I'm having a time out and leave it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I maybe I fit into the male camp, but I can take longer than an hour if it's something really core and really central.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I need a day, sometimes I need even more, But yes, it's what I'm hearing, the difference between stonewalling, which is pure avoidance and trying to escape, facing the issue, versus then being willing to pick it up again with fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so contempt. What examples have you got for us around contempt?
Contempt, yeah, it's I always find this a little bit trickier to explain, because I feel like it's a little bit like it's a bit more poisonous, but it's harder to see exactly what it is. But some of the examples that they would say would be, sarcasm or mockery or disrespect. It's that real, maybe coming from a place of like superiority in one partner, that sort of like looking down on the other. It is, they, we know from research, it's like the most poisonous of the four horsemen. It's the worst one.
Insidious.
Yeah, it's like really insidious. Yeah. So I guess I've seen it probably show up in that sense of like, a bit of superiority, a bit of just total disrespect for anything that their partner says. Yeah, and it's not good.
I've used that one. I've used it. I'll own it.
Oh, that's good taking responsibility.
So subtle though, isn't it? And I can see how it becomes a bit of an identity.
Yeah.
Yes, and sarcasm too is an interesting one, because it's kind of almost jokey. So I can see again how it could be that poison that you described, because it's almost hard to say, well, actually, that's contempt. That's not going to be good for us. Okay, so criticism, that's pretty obvious. Defensiveness, tell us a little bit about how that shows up.
Yeah, so I'd say that would be couples who, like, this is quite a common one, I think. It's basically like not taking any responsibility. So like the ability, like defensiveness is like not ever saying sorry or owning, okay, yes, I did do the wrong thing there, or sorry about that, or it's just the constant putting onto the, oh, it's your fault, it's you made me do that, or it's just the deflection, the defense, just push off yourself onto them kind of thing, or find every other are the reason for it. And yeah, definitely have couples express that they're, you know, frustrated that their partner doesn't say sorry or take any responsibility, you know. So never taking responsibility is considered, it's considered a horseman. So it's important to eliminate that. Yeah.
I can relate to defensiveness as well. And this has come about through conversations with Rachel and the use of nonviolent communication. She often recommends dropping
Mm,
vulnerability instead of
mm,
communication. And I've noticed it again in a very subtle way. If I've taken
mm,
something personally, or I've taken something as an attack when it may just be an inquiry.
mm,
So yeah, again, it may show up in quite a subtle way that I've just taken something personally, or maybe I've taken it to be a rejection or an
mm,
abandonment, which has then hindered me from really being open and receptive to what my partner's really saying. If
mm,
I'm starting to armor up and protect myself, which is where you
yeah.
know Brene Brown's work around vulnerability. I still have so much to learn in that
Mm,
space. But then those safe structures like NBC, where we take
mm,
responsibility, I think help um,
yeah.
to be raw and real instead of having to put up those defenses.
Mm.
Um, that's a really helpful list of examples. Thank you, Teagan. And I'll just check whether we've got any comments from our listeners. Um,
I'll just check whether we've got any
sorry.
comments from our.
Sometimes that happens. It's never nice to hear your own voice. Now we have Eli in the house. Hey, Eli, good to see you. We've been wanting to invite more male perspectives into the conversation. Eli is a very welcome, valued member of our NBC community.
Okay.
Libby is here. Great to see. Oh, Libby's posted for us the Four Horsemen. Awesome work, Libby. Thank you. She's an amazing resource of a human. Uh, and then Mia's saying, when faced with rupture within friendships, I've noticed there's more of a willingness to be patient and work on repair. But when it's romantic, I've noticed there's less willingness to turn into repair the same way we do with friends. Why is this? Is it about expectation? That's an interesting thought. What have you got for us, Teagan,
Mm.
on that one?
So why is it easier seemingly? Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know, like I guess off the top of my head, I think it's a really good question. I think perhaps like maybe there isn't that negative sentiment override in the friendship even. I think because you know, I guess I think like our person, our special person, we're like the most open with them, the most vulnerable. So therefore they can hurt us probably deeper than anybody else can hurt us too. Do you know what I mean? Maybe deeper than a friend. Like even if it's a really close friend, I think our romantic partner maybe has access to like a different place in us than a friend. And so I think, and there's also different expectations that we have of our partner, you know, than what we put on friends. And so I think therefore like we can maybe build up more of an inclination to build up those resentments towards our partner, and we're spending probably more time with them, and you know, so little things are probably going to be able to bug us more, or the disappointments might hurt a bit more than from a friend, you know. And so maybe even just that we're not in that state of that negative override with a friend, you know, because I think if you don't have that, like if you're in the positive perspective, you can repair a lot better because you still see the good about them, you know, you still see the good about what they bring to the relationship. And you know, maybe there aren't all those built up hurts there and unrepaired things and expectations that have been let down and things like that. Whereas with a partner, we're probably more likely to be in that state. I don't know, that's just my thought on why it could be easier to repair, because if you're not in that negative.
I think you're right. There's definitely less complexity, less baggage, is less loaded, less
Yeah.
expectation. You may have nailed it there, Mia. Yeah. And you're reminding me as you're talking that the sentiment override is really the starting point. You know, I'm thinking about
Mm,
couples that I've worked with where there's real apathy, and there's a lack of willingness even to invest. It's almost like, why would I bother repairing? And there is such a habit really of negative sentiment override that must be the starting point to get a bit of wind in our sails and respect, gratitude, all of that really, really base level stuff.
Yeah.
So Eli's asking, how do you hold a conversation like this if your other half doesn't want to or is not ready to? Okay, yes. I'm taking that to mean a conversation around the topic that we're talking about. Yeah, good question, Eli. How do you have a conversation if your other half doesn't want to or is not ready to? Yeah, wow, Teagan.
So is that around negative sentiment? Is that, just to clarify, is that around if you wanted to talk to your partner about that and they weren't ready, or to do couples therapy?
Give us some specifics, Eli. I'm going to take it to mean anything that we've discussed. How do you raise these things? Yeah, let's talk about negative. How would you raise with your partner? Oh, I think we might be in negative sentiment override if they're not willing to. I mean, the willingness is key, right? Willingness is the starting point. Without willingness, it's not even a relationship. There's a stone wall.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's more about perhaps using a positive sentiment override, using those 5 compliments, even if it's subtle. Hey, thanks for taking the bins out. Thanks for picking up kids. Oh, it's so gorgeous to see you playing with our dog. Maybe it's all those subtle ways just to put a little bit of invitation in. But willingness is fundamental, I think, to any kind of engagement. Do you have any suggestions, Teagan, on how to invite a partner who may not be willing into more vulnerable, relationship-oriented conversation?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, because usually I see my couples, they'll start together. Like, I wouldn't see just one and then they're saying, oh, he doesn't want to come, so they've kind of, I guess, already got them on board. But I imagine there would be a lot of people who one wants to come or not even just come, but do some work on the relationship, and the other doesn't, and there's that's tricky. It, like you said, like that willingness, if that's not there, that's like a key ingredient. It's like really can't do a lot with that. Do you know what I mean? Because there has to, for any change to happen, I think, like, we have to have that willingness. But I don't know, the only thought that I have on that would be like around the idea that I say to some people who maybe if they've come in individually and then they are thinking about doing couples therapy at some stage, or the partner's sort of saying, now we just go off and do our own therapy, we don't need to do work together. Like, you just do your therapy, I'll do my therapy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Statistically, you're more likely to break up. Like, the evidence shows that you need, like, the research shows that if you go off and do your own individual work, you're more not probably going to break up, more likely to break up statistically than if you do the work together. So
yes,
that could be a good hook, even to, if they want the relationship to work, we've got to go together. This stuff, it has to be done together. Like, all of these changes, yes, one person can absolutely start working on lots of these things, but like, some of it is too big. You need the 2 in the room doing the work and having the conversations together, not just one learning stuff and taking it. It's very different to do it together in the room, and that's what we guide the couple, and that's all going to strengthen the bond and everything between them, than just cognitive knowledge that they've learned. And do you know what I mean?
Oh, entirely. That's really, really valuable, and makes sense. The minute I'm doing it on my own, I'm going to be building myself, or the minute I say you need to go and do your work is the minute I'm kind of passing the buck. But the fact that it's come up within the relationship is there for a valid reason, and I'm only really going to learn about it with those triggers right there in front of me, prompt me to need to skill up and to apply my skills. And then I imagine there's also the benefits of learning together, where that way it's not just that I've told you about what happened, but actually then we're playing with this together, backing and forthing, and we're both skilling up. Yeah. Thank you for the tricky question, Eli.
It's tricky, yeah. Good question though.
Lisa says, I'm finding this really interesting. Sounds like a great foundation for a friendship or a relationship, tapping into my undermet desires for deep attachment. That is precious, Lisa. By the way, these are all our core community. So you're going to have to come now, Teagan, and join us at the end of
Yeah.
Sarah's asking, where would avoidance fit? Is avoidance a form of stonewalling? Yes, Sarah, there was, I hope you caught it. We kind of spoke a little bit about that difference, that stonewalling is, I guess, perpetual avoidance, chronic avoidance, whereas, um, yeah, but avoidance, where would avoidance fit? Let us know if there's something more on that, Sarah, if you could be more specific.
I could say something to that in the meantime while she's.
Yeah.
That's okay. I was just going to say, because I think that's a really good question and I relate to that personally. But there's another form of couples therapy, not to go on a different tangent, but it's called EFT, emotionally focused couples therapy. And I'm also trained in that. And it's an attachment-based form of couples therapy. So it's a whole different conversation to Gottman, but it looks at things from the perspective of our attachment and how it plays out within the relationship. So we might be anxiously attached, we might be avoidantly attached, we might be securely, or we might be fearfully avoidant. So it's a bit ambivalent between a flip. And just, I guess, at a real top level. So when we come into a relationship, a very common pairing is an anxious and an avoidant. It's like the most likely pairing. So what that looks like is like a pursuer and a withdrawer, and so one is more of a pursuer and one's a bit more avoidant. So you got the anxious, needing that reassurance or wanting closeness or wanting to repair, wanting to talk, wanting to check everything's okay. And then you've got they're paired often with, not always, but with someone who's a bit more avoidant, and that's their attachment style, their strategy that they've learned. And so when the pursuer is coming in like that, it makes them really even more avoidant. So they get more ingrained in their avoidant sort of tendencies. And so that pursuing is going to kind of make them even pull away even more. And so the pursuer then is probably going to pursue even harder, unfortunately, because then they're triggered by their lack of response. So this is like a really common thing. But yeah, avoidant sort of stuff, it's usually a learned attachment style. If someone's like really avoidant in a lot of areas, a lot of relationships, and it comes down to a core wound of like losing their freedom and independence. That's really what they're scared of. Someone who's avoidant that's their core wound. So they get triggered by things that would feel like it's going to take away their independence and their freedom. And often you can imagine with somebody who's a bit more anxious, and they're going to feel like a threat to that avoidant person. So it's going to feel like they're trying to take away their independence. So they're going to activate into that strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just tapping in, Sarah, to what you might, if there's something else there. It's really good to hear about attachment theory. We are all big fans of attachment theory. So yeah, it's really good to hear it from someone else's perspective as well. Attachment theory. We are all big fans of attachment.
Okay. I don't know how you do this. There's so many buttons and things happening.
No, we're doing great. So I'm imagining that Sarah is relating to Eli's conversation around if the other half doesn't want to, and is that avoidance or stonewalling? And he says that it does. Eli says, "Thanks, that does make sense." Sarah, oh yes, thank you for your explanation of avoidance. I still feel like I didn't quite catch something there, Sarah. So if there's something else, even an example you might give us, then we can unpick that one a bit more. And Steph says, that's not going to happen with Master Inky. I just have to settle in as being his human slave. Master Inky is Steph's dear pussycat. So these guys do. We talk about we talk about our pets, who represent needs, and who we are in intimate relationship with, and in attachment. So
Yeah.
The pets make a welcome entry. But we're over time. Sarah, if you've got something more, we've got time. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about you there as our final little signing off. But otherwise, guys, thank you for listening in. Take one more.
But otherwise, guys, thank you for.
Ugh, I'm going to have to find a way. Okay, I think that's us for today. Wow, Teagan, thank you for such powerful content and such applicable content too. I'd love to pick up again on accepting influence. That's a topic that, I know Jordan Peterson is big on agreeableness, and I have a personal interest in that. And yeah, your comments around flooding and taking time out, and of course even the phrase negative sentiment override, to be able to give that language. Oh, that's what's going on in relationship with my mum, or my son, or whoever it might be. Oh, we're in negative sentiment override. Maybe I can just gradually shift that over time.
Yeah.
Any final comments from you, Teagan?
Just on that it does take time. Like, the negative sentiment isn't a quick fix, and because it probably didn't develop quickly, so just to encourage people, if you are going to start doing the work, or even if you're just trying to do it yourself, or relate, like people that trying to shift it yourself, even it'll take time, like, because it happened over time, so we've got to reverse it, so just be patient. But it definitely is all very changeable. And I think that what I would say, I guess, just in that closing of that, is that it makes a huge difference. I think when you see that shift back over into the positive perspective, less conflict, more friendship, more getting along, just the whole atmosphere of the relationship shifts, like, dramatically. It was pretty huge, that one.
Yes. Thank you for bringing it to us today, Teagan. I hope we get to see some more of you on these lives, and of course at our community monthly practice group. Our next one is the end of July. It's the last Sunday of every month. So that's really it from me. Can people book in with you through North Brisbane Psychologists directly?
You can just call or email, and definitely. I've got openings at the moment.
Wonderful news. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and thanks again for your wealth of knowledge, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. See ya.
See you. Good night, everybody. Bye.